So I've been getting asked a little bit more frequently about gear recommendations, specifically lighting recommendations. What lighting equipment should photographers be buying? And my answer throughout my entire career has always been, well, whatever you can afford. And not that I've really changed on that stance. I still really think, hey, get what you can afford, you'll make it work. I've started to really hone in on my favorite pieces of lighting equipment. And most recently, as photographers are beginning to build their lighting kit for the first time, I've really settled on a few pieces of equipment that I myself could not work without. And if I were to redo my lighting kit today, meaning getting rid of all the gear that I have, these are the pieces of equipment that I would need in my kit.
Are you tired of the endless stream of fantasy marketing and vanity metrics? Yeah, so am I. My name is James Patrick, and I'm an internationally published photographer, media specialist, and marketing strategist. As a creative entrepreneur, I face the same exact frustrations you have, being bombarded by generic advice that promises success but never lives up to the hype. We need to move beyond the posturing, beyond the facade, beyond the image to navigate the unique challenges we face as creatives. Together, we're going to dive into real stories, real strategies, and the real work that can lead to the real results. This is the Beyond the Image podcast.
What is going on? And thank you so much for tuning in to this, our latest episode of the Beyond the Image podcast. I'm Ryan, that you could take some time to get some information, get a little inspiration that helps you in your creative entrepreneurial journey. So, lately, when it comes to building out a kit, I've really focused on just a few pieces of gear. Now, my history is I've gone through lots of gear. Now, when I was in college, I bought what I could afford, which was honestly Paul C. Buff. The Alien B packages were all that I, as a photographer, could really financially get. And I had to learn using that. Now, that limited me because this is, 20 plus years ago, that limited me to always having to have access to AC power because at the time, Paul C. Buff had not come out with their battery packs yet. Eventually, when they did come out with their battery packs, that was the next option for me, but they weren't light. They were very cumbersome, and it was difficult if I was shooting outside of my studio. At the time, I had a home studio. It was difficult if I was shooting outside my studio to put together all the gear I needed to take on location. There'd be the light heads, there'd be the battery packs, there'd be cords and extension cords if I could get access to any outlets. And we would have to schlep all that to wherever we happen to be shooting. And I'll give an example. This was probably a little over 10 years ago. I was doing a editorial campaign for a fitness magazine, and we wanted to shoot on top of this mountain. Well, that meant we had to get all the lighting, all the battery packs, all the gear, all the equipment, all the stands, all the sandbags, and hike those up a mountain to be able to shoot up there. It was incredibly difficult. And in fact, I had numerous assistants whose only job was to walk and hike the gear up the mountain. Once the gear was up the mountain, we were able to secure it, but we needed feet to be able to get the gear up the mountain. And it was incredibly exhausting. And that's not even before we take a single frame. And as I've gotten further along in my career, I've really honed in on what are the pieces of equipment that I find essential that I cannot do without. And from, like I said, I went through I've had dozens of Alien B lights, dozens of the Einstein lights. I've had the white lightning lights. I've had Ellen Chrome lights. I've had I've not owned, but I've tested and used Pro Photo lights, um, Godox, Flashpoint. I mean, Small Rig, any brand that you could think that creates lighting equipment, I've probably had some experience with. And what I found is that when it came to shooting on location, I was only bringing the same pieces of equipment every single time. And maybe it's because I'm older now and I don't want to be hiring assistants to schlep up hundreds of pounds of gear up a mountain. But also, I realized I didn't need it. all of a sudden I didn't feel that I needed all this heavy gear on all my location shoots. And in fact, I needed very little. And the gear not only has become far more portable and easier to transport, but also it's gotten smaller, lighter, and more compact. And if I had to get rid of all my gear and just have a few pieces of gear, these are the pieces I would have. I would start by having one powerful light. One. I don't know, and I can't think of many situations where I've absolutely needed more than a single powerful light source. And when I say powerful, I mean something where I'm using a light that I'm also competing with sunlight. Okay. So, for example, just yesterday, I was shooting a campaign and I was photographing a couple players from the Arizona Diamondbacks, but we were shooting in the middle of the day with the Arizona sun, which is incredibly difficult to contend with. And I just needed, honestly, it just needed the one light. And it was I have the Flashpoint version, but Flashpoint and Godox are identical. One just sells on Adorama and the other sells on B&H, but they're Explore 600. I cannot fathom needing more power than this. It has a detachable battery, which means I don't need to bring multiple lights and multiple batteries. I just need the one light head, and I could bring a few batteries, which are what? That has to be a pound, 2 pounds at most, versus the old Vagabond batteries that were, well, I'll just say much heavier. And this was the only major light source I needed for that campaign. I had another editorial campaign. I was doing a cover shoot earlier this morning. And once again, this was my key light. And I didn't even need, I had this dialed in at 132 power. That's how low I had this dialed in. So the amount of times I even need this at full power is not that common. So this light is in my bag almost all the time. And then I supplement this light with two other lights, and that is the 8200s. Also Godox, also Flashpoint. And by the way, the difference between the two is nothing. Just get whatever's cheaper. Like, for example, I saw like the Flashpoint, their version of the 600 right now is selling it's like $200 or $300 off right now. I mean, that's a freaking steal. But these 8200 speed lights are so light, so portable. And not only can you just get extra battery packs if you're going to be shooting for a long time or you anticipate going through multiple batteries, although I've shot for hours with these things that have not run out of juice. You also can get a bracket where you could mount the 8200 into the bracket, and now you can use any Bowens modifier with this. So this has now become as useful as a regular monoblock, because now I'm able to attach any modifier to this piece of equipment. So I can and do sometimes just travel with two of my AD200s, and I'll just bring the Bowens mount bracket and then two small soft boxes that can attach to this. And it's that simple. And this, all of a sudden, now I have both my lights, my camera, my lenses, and my modifiers all in a single backpack, one bag. Whereas before we used to have 2 or 3 Pelican cases that we'd have to drag wherever we were going. But for example, my cover shoot today, I used 2 lights the entire time. I used the 600 for my key light, and I used the 200 for my rim light or my hair light. And honestly, because I was dialed in so low on the power on the 600, I could have just used 2 of my 200s and would have been the exact same. because I have the bracket where I can attach a Bowens modifier to it. But that's what I would get. If I were told I can only have 3 lights, I would get one of these 600s and 2 of these 200s. And that would be my entire lighting kit. And in fact, when I'm shooting on location, I cannot fathom a situation recently where I've needed more than that. I can do corporate headshots with these. I can do editorial portraits with these. I can do commercial campaigns with these. And they're so light and so portable, I can do a lot of run and gun type work with these. So anytime recently when someone's asked, hey, what gear do I recommend? I just say, this is what I would get. This is what's in my bag right now. This is what I'm taking to set right now. So then the next question is, what modifiers do I put with this? Now, my opinion on modifiers has not really changed in 20 years, with 3 exceptions, and only 3 exceptions. In fact, now that I'm thinking of it, 2 exceptions. That's it. The third one, which is I prefer circular modifiers to rectangular. Whatever. That's just me. Like that's a personal thing. Like when I see a catch light and an eye, I prefer the catch light to be circular versus rectangular. Personal preference. But outside of that, there are 2 modifiers that I like, and outside of those 2 modifiers, whatever's affordable. Like I threw 2 small Octaboxes in my bag today. I think I got them each for around maybe 30 to 40 bucks a piece. And you know what they did? They shaped the light into a circle. It wasn't that much more complicated. They shaped the light. They filtered the light. They softened the light. That's all I need them to do. And I've used buff modifiers. I've used small rig modifiers. I've used Aperture. I've used Godox. I've used Elinchrom. I've used Profoto. I've used Westcott. They all soften the light and shape the light. They all do it. And I can tell you that outside of a few exceptions, I'm not seeing much difference between a Godox one that I got for $30, a Glow one that I got for $30, or an expensive one that I got for $200. They do the same thing. So get what is affordable, and that also frees you up to test things. Now, when it came to testing, there were a few that I got that did better than others. And those 2 were both by Elinchrom. One was a deep Rotolux softbox or Octabox. I believe the one I got was 39 inches. So it was not a large softbox, but it was a very deep softbox. And the reason I really loved this softbox was it had such a fast fall off of light because it was so contained, but was still soft at the same time. So it was soft while allowing lots of contrast. So I did a lot of really dramatic portraiture work with this softbox, and I absolutely love it. It was worth every penny. And that is the one out of, like when I'm on location, most of my shoots, I'm just pulling whatever softbox I just happen to grab out of the cabinet because I got a lot of them and they all look the same in regards to the quality. That's an exception because the quality of the light that pumps out just has such a richness to it that I adore. And the second one, like I said, was also Elinchrom, was their large indirect Octabox. And they have a 59, they have a 69, they have a 79. I don't remember what size I have. I'm guessing I have a 69 inch, but maybe it's the 75 one. But the idea of this is the light and the light head is shooting away from the subject, shooting into the softbox, similar to an umbrella, and then bouncing back onto the subject. So it is incredibly, ridiculously, unbelievably soft light. So great for soft light portraiture. But I don't use these modifiers day to day. I use them for special projects, and these are things that I'm pulling out when I have a certain look that I'm trying to achieve, which means 9 times out of 10, I'm grabbing my Aperture Octadome, Light Dome, my Aperture Light Dome. I'm grabbing a Godox softbox. I'm grabbing a Glow quick release softbox or Octabox, and that's what I'm throwing in my bag because it softens the light and it shapes the light, and that's all I need it to do. And it does that effectively, which means I've now reduced the amount of gear I have to travel with, the amount of gear that I have to think about, and the amount of gear I have to pack for most of my assignments. And I've really whittled it down to the 600, so the Explore 600, either from Godox or Flashpoint, and then the 280 200s from Godox or Flashpoint. And I should say, like, they don't sponsor me. They're not paying me to recommend this or to say this, although I would love them to. Please do, and please send me your stuff. I'll test it and I'll tell you if I like it, and I'll keep it, just to be transparent. But let me know. Let me know if you've tried these out, what your thoughts are, if you've liked using any of these, or if you would consider adding any of these to your kit. I appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate your 5-star reviews on the Apple Podcast app, for subscribing on YouTube, for telling this podcast to a friend. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you all next week. Take care, everyone.